Ben, for someone who is looking to be healthy and live a long life, what fitness standards are the most important in your eyes?
The biggest thing to understand is that it would not be one. That it would be a mixed modality. So if we're first maybe back up even before that, I think it's the right question because I believe that exercise has the greatest effect on health and longevity than anything else we could do. I have a framework where there's 5 different components, 5 different factors that I think really strongly influence our health, longevity, and vitality. Exercise being number one. And if we were to break exercise down into its like component parts, I think that there's really 3 big meaningful ones, which is your strength, your aerobic conditioning, and mobility. So what I would look for is the cross section of those 3. The idea is to build balanced, transferable capacity in each of those 3 and not chase the upper percentiles at the expense of the others. So to paint a picture for this, if we were to kind of lay out what that might look like, you take some really baseline so that they are very, very transferable, meaning like what is a fantastic test of strength? I would pick something like back or front squats. Deadlift could be there as a hip hinge movement, but if I was to choose one, I would choose the back squat. And then I would go, are you able to do a kind of body weight as the median? That would be a good kind of like place that I think everyone has the capacity to get to. 1.5 is probably a realistic goal that most of us could shoot for in a few years of training. And then a double weight back squat is something that takes real serious commitment to a fitness program. You're not going to get there just by playing around with dumbbells. Like you have to like commit to something. So I think that's a good like starting point for the strength one. I think running a mile, there's the 12-minute test for VO2 max. I think the really easy one for maybe I say that, but maybe for the international audience, maybe the 12 minutes is better. But running a mile, running 1,600 meters is a really good test of conditioning. It's on the upper end of a VO2 max, really, really high end aerobic capacity. And I think that kind of same thing. Most people could shoot for a 8-minute mile. I think somewhere if you can get below 6, that shows you don't get there without real level of commitments, being in the 5:30, 5:40s. And if you're around around 5 minutes, that's again, takes years and years of commitment. And then for that mobility one, I think that it's been kind of popularized recently, but the sit to stand test is probably as good of anything, just kind of like general capacity through your hips. And it also involves a little bit of motor control, stability, simple test of from a standing position, can you get to a seated position without using a knee, a hand, or an elbow to brace? And then can you return back to a stand-up position without using a hand, knee, or elbow, and without losing balance? So if you're able to do that, I've added in sort of another level of competency to kind of get to the upper levels. I work with a lot of high-level athletes that aren't really satisfied with just being able to do that. If you can do that standing, sitting, back to standing without using any extremities, and you're able to do it in under 3 seconds, that's kind of the upper echelon of that. The middle one would be, okay, you can do that, but it takes you longer than 3 seconds. And then kind of like the thing that we should all be able to shoot for is, can you do that with like maybe just dropping one hand to the ground, or maybe even more said is like you're doing it, but on the way back up, you kind of have to catch a foot out to catch your balance. So I kind of start with the broad spectrum of it, strength, conditioning, and mobility kind of intertwined into one.
Yeah, I think those 3 definitely make sense. I was wondering where you were going to go with the mobility because it's easy to get lost in joint angles and stuff like that. But
Right. Yeah.
I think something very, I guess, functional that you mentioned makes a lot of sense for most people, right? How to know when you're strong enough if we don't have any ultimate goals of performing at a high level or performing in sports, and we just want to do the best that we can with what we have, live the longest, be the most functional for as long as we can. When when is it good enough? Is it ever good enough?
So good enough would be relative, and I don't mean that relative to an age group or cohorts. It's relative to your other capacities. So it is never good enough, and we should constantly be looking for improvement, but not at the expense of the others. So my kind of take on fitness is that it's a balanced, multi-dimensional, transferable capacity, right? So joint angle's cool, but like, okay, but does this actually help us in what we're actually trying to accomplish? And transferable means like to other endeavors, specifically outside of the gym. I used to train people that would gym to gym. Like my job was to get people that are really good at working out in the gym. Um, my my efforts now go into make sure that people when they train are better at outside the gym. So to get back to the when is it enough? If you're if you can back squat 1.5 times your body weight, that's kind of that like level 2 of the 3 that I mentioned. Cool. Should you chase level 3 or are you strong enough? And the answer is, well, where are the other 2?
Hmm.
Because if you have a 9-minute mile, then the answer should be no, you shouldn't. You should work on your conditioning. Bring up your VO2 max, your lactic threshold, the other areas of your aerobic capacity will have more. It's just the law of diminishing returns, right? You're just going to have more. You're going to benefit by creating greater area under the fitness curve. You know, if you think about this kind of high power but low time, broad jump, power clean, med ball throw, and you think about the medium, like 1 mile run. You think
Hmm.
about the long, like multi-day hike or marathon. Where are you the best? And if you're imbalanced in that, you should put more effort into the area that you can have, on a scale of 1 to 10. If you're an 8 or a 9 in a couple of those things, but you're only a 3 or 4 in the other, we just know return on investments that you're going to get greater gains in your overall fitness from putting the areas that you're a little bit weaker at.
Yeah, and it's funny because that's usually the stuff that we don't like doing because we're
For
a little
sure.
bit less good at it than the rest, or maybe we're not built for it, right? If you're more of a powerful individual, then you're typically gonna gravitate towards the shorter, more intense stuff, and you'll leave the long stuff on the side. I guess it does require to get out of your comfort zone and do a little bit of the stuff that you don't love doing necessarily, right?
Yeah, there's definitely it sucks because there's a hit to the ego, right? And everyone wants to do the things that they're good at because it makes them feel good. There's also a little bit of like we have to understand what we're chasing, and if we're chasing health and longevity, this is the play: is you need to work on your weaknesses. If we're training somebody to be a professional athlete, yes, rounding off the edges, yes, training your weaknesses will help, but the answer then is different. And the answer is not bring up your weakest link. The answer is bring up the weakest link as long as there is no negative effect to your strengths. Because if you're an elite performer, and let's say that you're working with an NFL lineman,
Hmm.
American football, one of the 330-pound guys, and the reason that they're so good is because they're so explosive, right? They can get off the ball so quick, and they're really good with their hands. They're super fast with their hands. No one can get their hands on them, and they're able to keep people off. Well, if you find out that they get their weakness is their stamina, that they get winded in the fourth quarter,
Hmm.
and you stop working on or you try to build up their stamina because it's like, okay, Ben said, bring up your weakest link. If you work on that so much that it has a negative effect on their strengths, the reason they became a 1%er, the reason they became a professional athlete was because of that thing. You need to maintain that strength as well as you can. And this is a mistake I actually learned the hard way working with professional athletes is the mantra in our sport was, identify your weakest link, make friends with it, and then beat it to death. And that's right. but what should say that is not at the expense
Mm.
of the thing that makes you elite. You know, if you're a basketball player and you're in the pros because you have such good quickness, keep the quickness, right? You got to keep the quickness. The reason you got there was because of that, or it's because you have such a good 3-point shot. Well, if you lose that, you don't want to become well-rounded. Like you don't want to round off the edges and become just pretty darn good. You need to be elite at something. And so it's a different answer for health than it is for professional elite performance.
If we stick with that idea of strengths and weaknesses, it's interesting because most people will say, well, I don't want to work on that weakness because I'm going to lose all my strength, when actually you need quite little amount of your biggest strengths to just maintain it while you work on
Mm-hmm.
the other stuff. Obviously, you can't stop for
Totally.
too long because otherwise it can be detrimental to where you're really, really elite at. But typically, can you talk about how little you need to actually do to maintain something that someone is really good at year round?
It depends on what it is that they're really good at, right? So if it's top level explosiveness, that can go away fairly quickly. So we want to keep, if you're not training explosiveness, meaning like broad jump, power clean, if you're not training explosiveness,
Mm.
that will go away pretty quickly. Um, but there's funny things about like strength, like raw strength and endurance. So those two things stick around a long time. They take sometimes years to build, but they'll stick around for years. You'll lose the top end percent. So meaning like if you're I think like Louis Simmons, West Side Barbell, tells a story about this where, he was a 900,000 pound back squatter and ended up having back surgery. Spent half a year laid up and another half the year kind of just like getting back to some level of capacity.
Mm.
But without having done anything for a year, he got underneath the barbell and squatted like 700 pounds. Like you're still one of the super strongest people that's ever walked planet Earth.
Mm.
So it depends on where we are. It's the same thing for people that have built up so much endurance. If you've done 6 Ironmans in your life, you might not need to run over 4 miles for a year, and you could just jump in and complete a marathon under 4 hours because it's 6 round, it stays. It's more like the very top percentage will kind of get lopped off quickly. The top 10% will get lopped off kind of quickly, but the base hangs around. And those things that take more neurological components,
Mm.
like that explosiveness, like even more like the top end VO2, it's kind of like icing on the cake type stuff. But the base of endurance, the base of strength can kind of hang around and will be maintained really if you just kind of hit the things once a week. And that sounds really little, but if you did a one long run a week, after building a base,
Mm.
really strong aerobic base, again, you've done 6 Ironmans or you've run multiple marathons, and you just maintain running one long run a week, meaning something like a 90-minute to a 2-hour run, something that 10 to 15 mile range once a week, you're going to hold on to like that 90% capacity, be able to jump right back in to like a 6-week training peak if you wanted to. It's the same thing with strength. If you just get underneath a heavy something for each kind of major movement pattern, so heavy squat, heavy pull, and heavy push, you'll be able to maintain something for a really long time just doing that once a week without you don't have to be even 90% plus. If you're hanging around that 80%, you can maintain for, a really high capacity.
But in that, you still need to accept to give up that maybe 10% at the top temporarily, because like you said, you could probably get back up there within a matter of weeks by focusing back on it. But you need to accept that small trade-off of saying, I'm going to be 90% of my, real potential at this thing that I'm really good at, that I love doing for a while. But then I'm going to be able to come back faster. But that's often the price of, can I actually improve that weaknesses? Because am I giving it enough time to get better?
Yeah, and I would actually say that if we're measuring it not in terms of my capacity in that one actual specific domain, but we're measuring it in your total fitness,
Mm.
which is the balance across, right? That's what we're actually looking for, is the balance across those three. And the easy way to kind of picture that is, imagine like three concentric circles. And you have the circle of strength, you have the circle of conditioning, you have the circle of mobility. Well, which circle is the smallest? Like, most likely you could work on that one and actually lose nothing. You actually, there's the reason for GPP programming in general. The contention is that if you work on that thing, improve your weakest link, not like pour everything into it, but you bring it from a 4 to a 5 to a 6 on a scale of 1 to 10, you probably are not going to lose anything off the top on the other two categories,
Mm.
and actually may even improve them. We've seen this a lot with marathon runners who feel like they plateaued. They get in a strength program and all of a sudden now they're busting through PRs. And it happens on the flip side as well. You have these strength power athletes that get a little bit more conditioning on their belt and they start busting through because they're better conditioned. They recover faster. They handle higher loads better. They can compete better because they can go and get underneath the bar at a powerlifting competition faster than they would have before, where maybe their timing comes up on the platform quicker than they normally would have, and they can handle more. So we kind of understand that it is, yes, chase the peak because that's what it feels good. That's what's going to be able to post on Instagram. But and it's not to say that that's wrong, because a peak capacity in one area, having a big circle is better than having no big circles, right?
Mhm.
So it'd be awesome if our athletes were squatting 500 pounds. But what we're saying is, if you squat 500 pounds, but you can't get your arms fully extended over your head, that's a major deficiency. And instead of trying to get to 550, it would make a lot more sense to try to work on that, that shoulder flexion and extension.
Since we've touched on both health and performance so far in this exchange, could you give us an example of how you would structure that over a training year? Maybe it's a training season for somebody who's competing, and for somebody who just has health goals and no maybe calendar deadline to work
Mm-hmm.
towards. How would you organize working on strengths versus weaknesses throughout the year?
We'll start with the general fitness enthusiast, not the competitive athlete. It's a
Mm.
little bit simpler. What we'd be doing is a concurrent training program, which means we're working on all things all the time because we need a constant ready state, because we don't know when game day is. You don't know when you're going to trip on the curb and need the quickness to catch your foot. You're not going to know when you're going to have to um, use your physicality to fight off an attacker. Extreme example, but paints the picture. You don't know when the burning building, you have to run up the stairs, right? Again, extreme, but paints the picture. It's game day is unknown, so we want to be constantly ready and ready for anything. That's a big part of what we're trying to do with our regular people. For our elite professional athletes, we know when game day is, so we can work towards a specific peak. And what we would do is just kind of work backwards from that. So what we're going to want is, depending on what that event is and how taxing it is, we would want a peak. That's going to come right before a short taper.
Mhm.
And short is relative, right? If we're depends on the event, but that taper could be 48 hours up to 2 weeks. So a little kind of down of volume and intensity in training to allow all the work we've done to kind of catch up. The peak would be where we have our highest intensity training pieces. So we're getting as close to game day ready, hopefully overshooting the demands of game day. So we are actually doing really well. And then that peak is not long lived. That also is probably, depending on the event, just a 2 to 3 week period. It's hard, and people can't withstand that top end of physical performance for months. It just doesn't happen. So it's measured in weeks. Then before that, what we would do is, depending on the event, we would get a little bit more sport specific as we got closer to the peak. So if it was working with an elite rower, they'd be doing more rowing at high intensity. If it was a lifter, they'd be doing more specific lifts, maybe at closer to actual competition weights, maybe even mimicking some competition. And then before that, we would be working on essentially a base 1 and base 2 type thing, right? Where we're having like a little, the first one would be more about building up. And then the next one would be building up even more in volume and intensity for both of those things. Preceding that is your off season. So off season, again, depends on the demands of the sport, the age of the athlete, how quickly they're recovering, how many years they've been at the highest level. So I used to say when I was training athletes for the CrossFit Games, you want to take a month off essentially for every year you've competed at the CrossFit Games. So this is your first year there. Take all of August off. When we get back to September, it's time to get back into it. If you've been there 2 years, 3 years, take 2 or 3 months off. We would always start. So the competition was always essentially the end of July or beginning of August. Everybody would take August off. And then the next kind of thing was determined by how long you've been there. But everyone starts their real base 1 on October 20th is kind of like 10/20 was an easy way to remember it.
Mm-hmm.
And what led up before that was just like real true GPP. It's like lift some weights, but the mental toll of being a professional athlete is huge. So you're trying to shorten up the training season. And when you do that, it's just giving people a little more autonomy. Don't record your scores, go in, do this thing. And, or sometimes what we would do during that early time is just real weakness work. Like I want you to get in the pool 60 days in a row. And that's all I want because you suck at swimming and we need to get better at swimming. So it's like just a chance to really put all the effort into that. Or, we really need to get some strength in. Let's have you do like an off-season small off junior program to try to build up your back squat. So it'd be like a chance to kind of like bring everything down and do some focus work before we get into our build.
It's interesting, and I like what you said about a month for every year that you've competed at the CrossFit Games, and I guess it does also apply. I see it even at a slightly lower level, even for non-games athletes, but for people that love competing. I know a couple athletes that have been competing CrossFit at a good level in Europe for some years now, and at some point, more competitions in the year is not what you need because you know how to compete. What you need is more time between competitions so you can have the time to build back up to that peak, right? Because if you're always testing yourself, you're not building, or at least it's very hard to do both when you're getting to a certain level, right?
Yeah, exactly right, Sean. The saying we used to have, we would say is like, we don't want to compete ourselves out of shape.
Mm.
So there is, as a young athlete, we want them to get into competitions because there's, as you said, you have to know how to compete. And competing is very, very different than training.
It's a skill in and of itself, right? And you
Completely.
need to build the skill of the sport, of the different capacity, of the different movements, if we're talking about CrossFit, but then the skill of competing itself is also something that you need to have on your radar.
That's right. It's how long do I need to warm up before each event? Because they're going to pull me into the athlete staging area 25 minutes before my event, and I don't get to touch anything until then. So it's just like, how do I warm up, warm down? When am I going to get my nutrition in? Like, how does it, like, should I be staying close to the venue so I can get there quickly or far away so there's no distractions? It's like, there's a lot of things that come into play in terms of knowing how to compete. Just the distraction of the leaderboard every single weekend event, dealing with media and other athletes and fans. And there's a lot that comes into knowing how to compete. At a certain level, it's not about that. It's about making sure that we are, because every time we compete, it requires a taper beforehand. That's anywhere from 3 or 4 days up to 2 weeks, which means 3 or 4 days, 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 2 weeks, which means 3 That's lower volume, lower intensity. That means that we're not making the gains that we could otherwise. Then there's the competition itself, which in terms of the adaptation curve is going to smash you. You're not going to get fitter at a competition. You're going to get less fit because you're getting overworked. Then post competition, you need recovery, because not only is the physical demands from what you just went through, particularly in the sport that we have, which is brutal on athletes, but there's also the parasympathetic lashback of that super high stress environment that even if, like this is like what powerlifters do 3 lifts across a weekend. Like that's not a big demand, but it takes a long time to recover because the stress was so high. And that mental stress, as we know, you're going to have this lashback where you got to, what the pirate ship swings one way and then it needs to swing back all the other way. So you need the rest and recovery afterwards. Well, what that means is if it's a week or two to prep and a week or two to recover, every competition is essentially a month away from training. So yes, let's learn how to compete better, but let's also realize that we got cognizant of not competing ourselves out of shape. One of the ways that I grew up in, my fitness background was in triathlons, and Joe Friel wrote the Triathlete's Training Bible, and he had a really good framework for this, which is list out your competitive season, what races you want to do, and then label them as A, B, or C races. Realizing that A races are where you're kind of like setting up the season for, you're peaking. Those are the most important. B ones are like, yeah, like I'm gonna check the leaderboard, but I'm also not like this and that. So you can kind of like, they're like dress rehearsals. You can practice your transitions. You can, as you said, learn to compete. And then C races are just there kind of like almost as supported training days where you can go and do the thing and really learn about the competing. I think that more athletes in this kind of individual, like team sports, just takes care of itself, right? Because you have practices, scrimmage, preseason, and then games. They're doing it for you. In our world, they don't do that. So we have to kind of like manufacture this ourselves and realize that not every competition is the most important one.
How do you convey this to an athlete that sees every single competition as an A competition?
Yeah, you just have to like kind of help them understand the physiology. Like you can't do that. You can't stay fit all year long. When you put your body under stress, it needs to recover, and that's when you're getting stronger. And understand like what's the motivation for your competition. If it's like, hey, I need it, man. It's like it's my thing. If I don't do this, I'm gonna like do bad things in the world. It's like, okay, I get it. Like, go compete, go do your thing. If it's like, I want to try to be a professional and I'm going to do that by competing a lot, then it's a matter of getting them to understand a little bit more. And it's not their job. They're the athletes. Like, we're the coaches. It's our job to get them to understand how to improve. So you just kind of lay it out for them.
Yeah, what you said before was, I think, really important. You talked about, the physical toll of a competition. There's the nervous system that takes a hit, but then just the emotional side of it as well, right? Being in that high stress environment. There's also, even outside of this, the idea of reaching a goal or something that you've been aiming for all season or all year. I remember when I did my first indoor rowing competition, and I'd been working on this for 6 months, and that's all I was thinking about. And I felt so empty the week after, not just physically, but even emotionally, because I had reached that peak, and after the peak, it has to go down. But like you said, you have to learn to let that pendulum swing. And when it's new, you don't know what to do. You want to train again. You want to go at it. You know what you did wrong. You need to do it better. But talk about allowing that pendulum to swing and accepting the fact that there's a little downhill after you reach the tippy top.
Yeah, well, I certainly learned this the hard way. I've learned more from my mistakes than I have from the successes. And I think what happens after competition is one of two things. One is either like, there is that like, oh my God, that's like, whoa, that's over. As you said, like indoor rowing competition, 6 months leading up to this, super dialed, super focused. You do it, success or not, you're kind of like, It's the air comes out of the balloon a little bit. That's what we call as I mentioned, it's the parasympathetic lashback. Your
Mm.
CNS has two kind of modes to it. One is go, 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 fight or flight. I need to be on. It's adrenaline, it's cortisol, and it's when you're there, it's peak performance, but there's no recovery or building. And in fact, your immune system gets depressed in that state. So what ends up happening a lot of times is once you've achieved or once you've gone through that event, your body goes, it's not there. The threat, which is it's a threat, like goal, that thing that is gone, and you swing back into the parasympathetic nervous state, which is rest and repair. This is a natural thing. You need the ebb and flow. You need both. Not understanding this in my young coaching career, one of my athletes came out of the games with the opposite. They came out not with this like, okay, that's over. They came out like, I am so motivated. I am so driven. I've tasted it. I know what I can do to be better. I'm as fit as I've ever been. Let's go. So I went and we just pushed and we didn't take the time to recover and we kept going. And her body started shutting down to the point where like adrenal glands were just rocked. She started losing her hair. She became incredibly fragile. So like, this is not something that you get to, it's not like a mental toughness thing. This is not I am strong, I am weak, I'm going to push through or not. Your body's going to shut you down. So you can either be in front of that or behind it. If you're in front of it, it's less time and it's more productive because your body now is like, okay, let's go. Let's rest, digest, and repair. Let's make this body better. If you do it the other way, the body's like, I am going to shut you down so you can't kill me. And it's this understanding that that's not just from a physical standpoint, because she was ready to go. She's like, I'm not sore. I'm not tired. I'm ready to keep training. But you have to realize that the mental stress, even if you're incredibly motivated coming out of it, was real. And this is what we feel after even doing like a public speaking engagement, right? You go to this, you travel to this event, there's tons of people at it, you go and you speak at this thing, you've been put in this stressful environment. Finally, it's over, you come back, you get off and you're like, oh my God, like, I'm tired. Or sometimes even like people might even feel this, like after a long drive, right? After a long drive where you get to the place where you are and you're just like, you just want to sit down. Like, oh, well, that's because you were like, your body was on. You're a little bit in the autonomic because you're just driving, but you're still like in a little more heightened sense than you would have been otherwise. If you've done a 4-hour drive, you are tired from that drive and your body needs to recover from it. It's not like a choice. It's a thing that we want to be in front of. And if you set up your season as an athlete to be able to do that, you get to have that nice upward and to the right flow of that adaptation curve. You get stress, recovery, stress, response, recovery. And you get to kind of go back up, super compensation.
I wanted to circle back to the health topic we started on, and you mentioned exercise is one of the 5 main elements of your framework. Can you talk to us about the rest of that framework?
Yeah, so it's what I call the 5 factors of health, and they are how you train, eat, sleep, think, and connect. And the connection is with yourself, others, and with nature. So to break those down quickly, the kind of like wave tops of each of them, movement is medicine. We are built to move. If we don't move, we atrophy and we will get sick and potentially even die. So we need to move. My take is that while movement is medicine, there's sort of a hierarchy to movement. So movement is better than being sedentary, right? Just what we're doing now. But like, so movement is gardening. It's going 10,000 steps. It's dancing. It's like, that's movement. It's better than being still. But better than movement is exercise. Exercise is going to the gym, taking a spin class, going for a jog. That's better than just 10,000 steps. But better than exercise is training. Training is exercising for a desired outcome. You train to get a 300-pound back squat. You train to be able to run a sub 4-hour marathon. You train to be able to do 20 pull-ups. I think even better than that is what we talked about at the beginning of this conversation is well-rounded training. Let's be able to not just be strong, but also be mobile and fit. So that's a kind of the hierarchy to that. The simple structure that everybody can do is, and this is why I think people get frustrated with training, is because they've been told, well, just take the stairs, not the escalator, right? They say park farther away at the grocery store so you get some more steps. And it's just not enough. Like I feel, yes, it's better than being sedentary. But if you're trying to make real meaningful change, the little things aren't enough. So my take is it's a 5-3-1 protocol. Train 5 days a week, have 3 days be strength and 1 day long. Super simple. 5-3-1. The next one is eat. And really simply, there's a lot of debate and confusion out there about nutrition because everyone's a nutrition expert because we've been doing it from the first few hours we were alive. So everyone's got their take. I think that we're kind of getting caught up in the nuance of nutrition in terms of like, is it carnivore? Is it vegan? Is it keto? Is it about macros? Are eggs good or bad? What about the carcinogens of using an air fryer? Don't have strawberries because they're grown in nutrient deficient soils and there's microplastics in the. We can make it really simple in 3 words, and that's eat real food. I mean, if we just moved from ultra processed food to real food, a lot of stuff falls into place. Yes, we could start thinking about calories as well, but calories start to fall into place when you start eating chicken, fish, eggs, steak, vegetables, fruits, nuts, avocados. Like it's just like it's way more challenging to overeat that than when you're doing Pop-Tarts, Doritos, Skittles, Kit Kats, Goldfish, and all that snack food that's super hyper palatable. Like it tastes delicious and it doesn't fill you up. So it's like you can just sit down and like, oh my God, I just ate a whole sleeve of Oreo cookies. What the hell happened? So no one's eating like a whole bag of baby carrots. And if you are, not a big deal because it's 200 calories as opposed to the 1,200 calories of a sleeve of Oreo cookies. So it's really simple. Eat real food, and all of a sudden things start to fall into place in terms of how lean you are, but also your skin, your gut, your brain function. All these things require nutrients, minerals, vitamins, photochemicals, fiber. Like we just need that stuff. But we don't need to be experts. We can just eat the food that roamed the earth or grew out of the ground. So simple.
Why do you think there's such a tribal approach to eating, even more so than exercise or other activities that we do or should do regularly?
It's a good question. I think it's mostly because people have tried it themselves and seen success. So once you've tried something, you've seen success. I don't think it's ill-intended at all. I think it's really, really well-intended, which is like, dude, I went vegan and I feel awesome. I feel amazing. You got to be vegan. And if you're not, like, dude, you got to try this thing. Same thing. Like, but then you have people that like went carnivore and they're like, it's amazing. You got to do this. It's like, it's awesome. So I get it. Like they've done it themselves. They've seen people that haven't tried these things aren't trying to pull people in. They're not like, no one that isn't a vegan is like telling other people that they got to be vegan. So I think it's just that. It's that they've had success and they want to share what's worked for them. They all work. That's the thing. Because what most of those things, all diets are trying to do one of two things. They're either trying to control calories or they're trying to move you towards real food and away from processed food. That's it. So you have these debates between the vegans, which is just vegetables, and the carnivore people, which is just meat. They're both right. They're both controlling calories and they're both moving towards real food. So it's okay. They're just doing it in different ways. Certain diets do it different, right? There's macros, which is all about calories, and they're saying kind of like flexible diet, right? And you can kind of eat whatever you want, but we're going to control the diet. They'll see results because they're controlling for calories. Then there's the opposite approach to that, which is like paleo. It's just like just eat the real food, and they're moving it towards whole foods, and like you won't have to worry about they're all right, and that's what makes it hard. Is that no one's going like yes and they're trying to fight no this way, no that way, and it's they're all solving for the same thing.
I think what you just said there, the and is for me such an important word to bring back into our vocabulary because we're in a world of or and we need to be in a world of and. We need to be able to accept that there's not always just one answer, that sometimes or oftentimes it's two things or two things together that are the answer rather than polarizing and finding one or the other.
Jim Collins, who's a terrific um, author that writes about business. He's written Good to Great, Built to Last, Beyond Entrepreneurship. He has this great kind of mantra, which is, or this principle, which is the most successful people can operate with the dichotomy of the and, which means you can hold two competing thoughts in your head at the same time. It's not macros or paleo. It's yes and. It's not vegan or carnivore. It's yes and. So it's very much this idea of, in business, it's like, well, do we need to focus on the details or do we need to get the big picture right? And everybody that's been successful in business knows like it's not one or the other, it's both. And they're competing ideas. It's like, should we be focused on the customer or on profits? We so badly as humans want binary. We want yes or no, black or white, ones or zeros. And the world just doesn't work like that. There is so much gray and there's so much ambiguity and there's so much what can seem like conflicting viewpoints that we need to find the overlap and hold both thoughts in our heads at the same time.
Is there any ambiguity around sleep, in your opinion, at this point?
Yeah, I think that there is. And
There
there's a
is?
whole lot less. There's a whole lot less than there was 20 years ago because when I was coming up through fitness and I was coming up through entrepreneurship, sleep was a negative. And it still is there in the hustle culture. Like Elon Musk is like, if you sleep 8 hours, I'm only sleep 4. That's 4 more hours every day that I'm doing that times 7. I'm going to get an extra work day and a half in every week. You can't compete with me. So there is that hustle culture. It's like sleep is for the lazy, sleep is for the weak. If you like, so there is still that kind of hanging around. But the conversation has massively shifted from 20 years ago. So I credit Matthew Walker for kind of like really bringing this to life. Phenomenal book, and he has a great way of speaking about this, and he's definitely been kind of the person that's brought this to the forefront of how important this is. But yeah, it wasn't really known how much sleep can affect health, performance, and longevity before he kind of like really made this strong push. It was very much the opposite. So the really kind of high level wave tops of sleep is it's 3 legs of the stool, which is quality, quantity, and consistency. So super simple. Quantity is 7 to 9 hours. Big thing to recognize there. If you've ever worn a wearable, most of us are asleep for upwards of an hour less than we go lights out to lights on, right? Because we toss and we turn, we wake up in the middle of the night. We actually find times that we're awake in the middle of the night. We stare at the ceiling for a little bit before we fall asleep. So this is why we just make it really simple. And we say shoot for 8 hours. Because if you're for 8, you're at least going to get the 7. Sometimes you might get 7.5. Hopefully you can get on the upward side of that. So really simple quantity, sleep 8 hours. The next is quality, which is like sleep hygiene to improve your sleep, because you could sleep for 8 hours and one end of the spectrum would be unconscious, not asleep, which is like you got hammered, right? You had like 6 Jack Daniels and took a bunch of THC and you just kind of like passed out. That's not restorative sleep. So the quality of your sleep matters. Not to the far end of that spectrum, but we can do lots of things that can improve our quality of sleep. Things like sleep in a cold, dark room, right? No lights whatsoever, between 62 and 68 degrees Fahrenheit. Don't know what that is in Celsius. Um, um, some little bit of white noise. So little noises that happen throughout the night don't wake you up. Particularly more important if you live in a city or maybe way out in nature where you are, if there's animals. Um, and then things like being exposed to light or stimulus in the hours before bed. So your body's starving to try to figure out what time of day it is all the time. So it can work on this normal circadian rhythm of this ebb and flow of hormones of when it releases things like epinephrine and cortisol, stress hormones, which come up in the morning, then it kind of tail off, and things like melatonin and other stuff kind of start to come up. There's a natural flow to that. If there's artificial light, you can get really thrown off by that. One of the ways that helps it is by getting bright outside sunlight early in the morning, kind of triggers like, okay, low solar angle, your body can kind of identify that the sun is there at that angle, different colors, and recognize I'm going to start to get ready so that I'm tired as I get closer. And then there's also things like email or social media or other things that trigger the mental aspect of you become emotional or responsive and you get thrown into that fight or flight again, which is go, go, go instead of rest and repair. So avoiding things that might trigger you, whether that's opening up an email or social media, or being around certain people. And then there's the last one, which is caffeine or any other external substances that might hinder sleep. The easiest way to say that is caffeine can have a half-life of 4 to 8 hours. So the easy rule there is no caffeine after noon, and you'll probably be in a pretty good shape.
Yeah, it's interesting how individual that is. I heard that a few years back and then tried to pinpoint what my latest coffee allowable is. And I know that 3 p.m. coffee is okay. But if I go any later than this, then it does affect my sleep. And like you said, for other people, that might be even earlier than that. So you have to, figure it out for yourself and then do what's right.
Yeah, the other part about that, which is a little weird, is that it's we definitely want people to self-experiment as an N of one to figure things out. But a lot of people don't feel, they'll like, no, I can have caffeine after dinner and be fine. There is a chance of that. It's very, very low. So most people will be affected, even though they're like, no, and I can fall right asleep right away. But they're not going to get into that deep restorative sleep. Basically, you're just getting pushed back. And your body will go every 90 minutes or so, you go through a sleep cycle. And each phase of that sleep cycle does different things to help promote health and longevity. And you need that. And if you kind of don't have that, the simple one to kind of think about is most of the HGH, the human growth hormone, awesome, amazing, healing, health promoting hormone, gets released in the early part of the night. And if you don't get into that deep restorative sleep early in the night, you miss a big part of that HGH dump that's happening all the time. So it's kind of like the saying is sleep is the best performance enhancer. Everybody could probably benefit by doing sleep better in some form or fashion, quality, quantity, or consistency, which is the last piece. Again, your body's really trying hard to figure out what time of day it is. Every cell in your body is trying to take that in through your senses, through your eyes, through your nose, through your mouth, through your ears, through through your skin. It's always trying to figure out what's going on outside so it can figure out how to react inside. If you wake up and go to bed consistently, meaning within 30 minutes, doesn't have to be perfect, but if you always go to bed at 9:30 and, okay, so that's anywhere from 9:50 is cool and 9:20 is cool. What you don't want to do is get outside of an hour. This is why people that even travel 1 hour through a time zone can be really affected by it. And it's true. They're not lying that 1 hour time zone makes a big difference. Matthew Walker talks about that there's a experiment that's done with over half the people in the world twice a year that shows the effects of this. And it's daylight savings. When we spring forward and lose an hour over 20 heart attacks and car crashes both go up by over 20% following when we lose it. And then the opposite happens when we fall back and everyone gets an extra hour of sleep. It goes down by 20%. It's like an hour matters, not just for that hour, but also for the consistency of knowing kind of the ebb and flow of that circadian rhythm.
So if we go to the fourth factor of health, think you said it was?
Yep. So think is basically we are just the accumulation of our thoughts. Like who you believe you are, how you believe your life is. If you believe that you're happy, you're happy. If you believe that you're sad, you're sad. So we have to understand the power of our thoughts. The kind of like saying is your thoughts become your words become your actions dictate your life. So we want to control our thoughts. And that's not the right word. We want to be aware of our thoughts and then pay attention to the ones that serve us and let the other ones go. So we have a really simple framework that help people identify whether they're thoughts that they should hang on to or let them go. Because we all have the good ones, we all have the bad ones. And it's a spectrum. On the lower side, you have thoughts that sound like a victim, right? Which is all about pointing fingers. It's somebody else's fault. It's all about external circumstances. The weather sucks, the traffic sucks, the politics suck, living here sucks. It's their fault. I can't get ahead because of that. Right? Pointing fingers instead of pulling thumbs. Then there's the pessimist, which is just negative. It's so hot outside. They just complain. It's so hot outside. This workout's terrible. All the negativity that surrounds them. And we know those with a pessimistic mindset will be outperformed by those with an optimistic mindset. Fighter pilots, ER surgeons, classical violinists, athletes, everyone that has a positive mindset will outperform somebody with a negative mindset. So why would we want to hold on to that? So we try to be more positive. So that's not the highest level. And that's what most people aspire to, is to be an optimist. But the optimist has a couple things. The first one is they think that just everything's going to be fine. Don't worry about it. It'll be fine. Everything's going to turn out just okay. Things don't always do that. They lack bracing. And when things do actually go bad, they crumble. They just get destroyed. This is the Stockdale paradox. It has to do with prisoners of war. James Stockdale was one of the highest ranking officers that was captured in the Vietnam War. They said, "How did you make it?" He said, I was realistic about what was happening. I was like, this is going to be terrible, but I can survive it. That's what we're trying to get to, is be a realist. This is going to be terrible, but it will end and I can't survive this. He said that the optimists were the ones that actually died first. Don't worry, guys, we'll be out by Christmas. Christmas would come and go and they died of a broken heart. The pessimists actually outlived them. So pessimists can outperform people in certain situations. Mostly when you're preparing, you want to be a pessimist. When you're about to enter into the event, you want to be an optimist.
Yeah, it's like prepare for the worst, hope for the best, prepare for the worst, right?
Yeah. What are all the things that could potentially go wrong, right? And think about those. Contingencies.
It very much reminds me of something I heard about BUDS, the Navy SEAL Academy, and how they did, and I don't know if it was interviews at the end or an audit of all the people that had gone through, those that had succeeded, those that gave up. And it seemed like one of the trends that they picked up is that those that succeeded had the shortest expectation of getting to the next sunrise, getting to the next meal. I think they had a meal every 6 hours during Hell Week. And those that said, "Oh, I'm going to make it through the 6 months," those didn't do as well. So it's exactly a bit in the same area, right?
Exactly right. Yeah. Yep. Just so if you have like this victim mindset, pessimist mindset, optimist, realist mindset, which is this is going to be hard, but I can survive this. Then there is the highest level, which is the warrior mindset, which is the understanding that we grow through challenges. So why would we not embrace and not necessarily, I don't want to say look forward to them. Nobody wants hardship, but when hardship comes upon us, which it's always going to. This is what the realist understands and the warrior understands. It's going to come. Well, when it comes to the warrior goes like, bring it on. This is where I'm going to grow. This is where I'm going to evolve. This is where I'm going to become better. So what we want to be able to do in terms of think is first become aware of the thoughts in our heads, and then get an understanding of, well, is this thought serving me or not? And what we want to do is get at least to be an optimist, because the optimist is not going to be detrimental for the most part, unless you're a prisoner of war. But in most situations, it'll serve us. Certainly, we need to start to re-navigate and reframe, let go of thoughts that are of the victim or the pessimist, because those are the really detrimental ones. And all we're trying to do is work with the little tiny weights, the mental weights. Every single time you get triggered, person, you're stuck in traffic. What's the thought process? It's really small. Cool opportunity to work on your mental fitness. People believe that this is just inherently ingrained in us. It's not. And people in our space, we know that if you want to get muscles lean, fit, and strong, it takes training. Well, your mind is no different. Some people have a leg up because both their parents were Olympians and they were brought up in an environment of training. And so when they become 7 years old, they're like, oh my God, look at the kid. He's a prodigy. It's like, no, he's just 7 years ahead of everybody else. It's the same thing with the mental stuff. But if we're not there, like the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. I get it. The next best time is today. We start working on this thing today. And when we feel that little trigger, we go, okay, where was that thought? And you label it. You go, okay, can I let that go? Can I reframe it? Can I bring this up to be something a little more productive? And we're just constantly trying to shift up and over to the right, kind of constantly elevating our minds. Sometimes it'll work and sometimes it won't. Just like sometimes you go in the gym and you can pick up 100 pounds, but then every now and then you walk over to the weights that are too heavy and you can't pick them up. I get it. Like, okay, that we're not ready for that yet. Meaning small things, the weather, traffic, your sports team loses, your phone doesn't connect to your car. Like all of those small little things are opportunities for us to go like, am I going to let this bother me? Am I going to get rattled by this? Because it shouldn't. If it does, I got work to do. Then you can start to handle the bigger things, right? Someone saying something about you on social media, your boss asking if you could talk first thing on Monday morning, your spouse saying something that triggers you. Those are bigger things. I don't know if we're ready to handle those yet. Probably not right away. Maybe with a little more space and perspective we can. And then there's the really big things, right? Like you lose your job, there's a recession, your kid gets shipped off to war, you lose a loved one. That's the 1,000-pound squats. Like there are some people on planet that can handle those things. I'm not one of them, but I'm not worried about handling those things. I'm going to try to train at my threshold to try to handle the smaller things. And maybe if I do this enough, I'll be able to handle those big things.
I know we're a little bit short on time. Ben, I was wondering if you have a few more minutes to talk about the connect aspect, and
Absolutely. Yeah. Of course.
especially the connect to nature. For me, everything that you said here, I really like your framework and how you brought the think factor in. And I find that if I walk in nature, if I spend more time outside with myself and just my surroundings without my phone and anything else, that helps a lot with the
Yeah.
thoughts and with noticing them, and then them being a little bit kinder as well.
Well, I think that you basically nailed it, right? So the connect one is connect with yourself. Do you understand what lights you up? Do you understand do you have a vision for your life? Do you understand what your values are, what's important to you, your core tenets? Like what are the important things in your life, right? Because if you can identify those things, you can set up your actions on a daily. That alignment creates a lot of peace of mind. And when most people, I should say, some people don't take the necessary work to figure that stuff out, and they have a misalignment. The way that they're spending their days is not in alignment with what they see as a meaningful life. That's a huge level of subconscious stress. It's going to be really hard to vocalize it. It's going to be really hard to figure that out, but it's inside of you. There's this misalignment going, something's wrong. Something's wrong. Meaning, if you find a lot of value in being by the lake, walking in nature, being with your dog, training hard, reading, learning, but you work in a city with people that you don't get along with, in a job that you don't see any value or meaning in how you're contributing to the rest of the world, like that could be a big place of misplaced effort. So there's connecting with yourself, connecting with others is the obvious one. Like there's the Harvard study, which is just so, they say the number one thing that relates to health, longevity, and a happy life is having meaningful relationships above smoking, above um, access to quality medical care, earning potential, like anything. The number one foods that they ate, blue zones, the number one thing that dictated happy and long, healthy lives was relationships that they had. And then the last one is connected with nature, which is what you just said. We are animals. We're really evolved animals, but we are animals. We are not supposed to be in artificial light. We are not supposed to be talking on screens. We're not supposed to be isolated. We're not supposed to be in air conditioning. We're supposed to be out in the world, getting sunlight, getting air, interacting with the soil, the trees, and the water. That is what us at our essence of being human is about. So we want to just look for those opportunities to do that. And there's really cool studies that explain this in really fascinating ways in terms of, there's a housing project where one side looked at a parking lot and the other side looked at the woods in the back. And they went back and studied the people that lived there. And just the people that looked at the woods were so much more healthier, happier, and successful than the people that looked at the parking lot. It's a pretty big study over decades and decades. It just goes to show like the importance of us getting out of the concrete jungle and into the real world, because that's what we're designed to do.
And linking that back to what you said initially with exercise, and you talked about moving, you talked about training. I find that for some, you said, training is higher up on the hierarchy than just exercising or even just moving. I find that for myself at some point, even though I was training maybe an hour a day, I was still lacking the movement that came below that is lower intensity, that is more constant. Like you said, gardening, being outside, just the basic movements. And I found myself to be essentially active in the gym, but then sedentary outside of it. And then try to connect, almost had to go backwards on that and figure out, okay, I do need to almost, if I don't have a reason to go out, I need to go out. I need to go walk. I need to get my 10,000 steps. Even if I train in the gym an hour a day, that's not sufficient. I need all this. And ideally I need this outside. I need that in nature. I need that without my phone. And that made a huge difference.
Yeah. A couple hundred years ago, we wouldn't need this framework, right?
That's right.
Because if you think about like the training, like you were building fences, plowing fields, moving hay bales, fighting off invaders, like building rock wall. Like our lives were manual, and we were outside all the time, and we were with other people, and we slept when the sun went down. We woke when the sun came up. It was just, there was no such thing as ultra processed foods. Like this didn't need to be a framework or a thing. In today's world of ultra convenience and comfort, we need to manufacture the moving, because we might only be doing an hour in the gym, whereas before it was 8, 10, 12 hours of all sorts of labor, right? It was like the long and slow, and then the short and intense. Like that was a part of our everyday lives. So now what we have to do is we kind of have to manufacture this, and it's not a bad thing. It's great. I would take this life over that one 100 times over, because we have more peace, we have more health, we have more longevity. The disease and all of the rest is almost compared to what it was 1,000 years ago. It's basically non-existent. But what we want to do is not just succumb to all of it. Like with these ultra conveniences come some other things that we have to also learn to navigate. We just don't want to take it wholesale and go, okay, here it all is, and now that's the way we are, and we end up like the humans in Wall-E, where we're just like rolling around in these motorized scooters. It's like we have to purposefully put some practices in place so that we don't get distracted with the convenience that we all now have.
That's a great way to say it, and it's a great way to end it, Ben. I know we've run over the time already, but I want to thank you for that exchange. It was a pleasure chatting with you. I've been following your work for almost 15 years now, and seeing everything that you've done and how far you've come is inspiring. So thank you so much. For those that want to learn more about what you do, where can they find you online?
The best place is probably either CompTrain. CompTrain.com is where we put out our training program, or Ben Bergeron on Instagram. Either one of those two is the best place to find me.
Fantastic. The links will be in the description. And thanks again for coming on, man. It was a pleasure.
Thanks, Sean. Appreciate it.
Before I let you go, I want to tell you a little bit more about this podcast sponsor. All You Need Nutrition is a high-quality supplement brand proudly made in France. When they first reached out to me, my wife, who's a trained nutritionist, had a lot of questions about the different ingredients that they use. So we scheduled a call with Miriam, the mastermind behind the entire All You Need product line. After the call that lasted almost 2 hours, my wife was really impressed by their transparency and the quality of their products. She was excited to work with a brand like All You Need. And if my wife says yes to a supplement brand, I'm on board without hesitation. Personally, I love their whey protein. I use it after every strength session or mix it in with my yogurt in the morning when I want a little extra protein. It's not too sweet, the cocoa flavor is delicious, and it blends really well. Their one product is fantastic if you're looking for a light energy boost plus all the vitamins and minerals you might need if you're used to training hard. My wife sticks to 1 scoop, but I go for 2. Make sure you find the dose that works for you. And special shout out to their shaker bottle. It's literally the best shaker I've used in the past 15 years. We've been using their supplements for the last 2 months, and we're genuinely thrilled to be working with them. If you want to support the podcast, click the link in the description to check out their whole product line and use the code UPSIDE for 10% off on your next order with All You Need Nutrition. Take care and see you in the next episode.